Today we're talking with Washington State Representative Andrew Barkis from the 2nd Legislative District. Welcome to the program, Andrew.
Thank you, Kelly. It's good to be here. It's good to see you.
The legislature seems like it's been really quiet lately. Can you explain why?
It's been quiet at the building because we've been locked out for the last couple of months. They actually just opened it here. I haven't even been to my office since we left session. Kelly, we're under what's called a campaign or election year restrictions. So we have many things that freeze when we're in session. So when we're in session, we can't raise money and do different things that are political in nature. And then when we're out of session, when it's an election year, we can't use any resources that would be deemed state resources to promote, to inform even our constituents. There are major restrictions because they don't want to have the perception or the abuse of using state resources to promote a campaign message. It makes it incredibly challenging, especially during an emergency and crisis. I can't send out email blasts to my constituents. I can't do videos. I can't do anything that has the reach that we typically have. It all has to be done via social media, our own stuff. It's crazy. And I can give you an example. This last week, we had the great news, the actual victory for the legislature on the ruling that ruled that the governor overstepped his bounds with the veto of the transportation budget in 2019. It was actually a proviso that I wrote with regards to small transit agencies being able to have access to grant dollars. And the governor vetoed the word fuel type because I didn't want to have them restricted to having to buy electric buses when they couldn't afford to do that. But we wanted to get out a press release on behalf of the legislature. We actually had to request special permission from the chief clerk's office, who runs the House of Representatives, to be able to be allowed to do that because of the significance of it. We had to get approval, and then we put our statements together through our comm staff, and they were even revised because they can't be deemed too political. It's just challenging right now. The only person who doesn't have a challenge in getting his message out is the governor. And guess what, Kelly? The governor's also running for re-election this year. But for some reason, under his emergency proclamation, he's not subject to the same restrictions that we are.
Speaking of the governor, along with a handful of Republican lawmakers, you filed lawsuit against the governor because of his extension for the stay home, stay healthy order. And shortly after you filed that lawsuit, Inslee said that he vigorously disagreed with your position and he called your group short-sighted. What's the status of your lawsuit? And do you have any other comments about that?
He also called me heartless and non-scientifically based and all sorts of other great things. You know, for a guy who bemoans about our president calling people names, he sure does plenty of it. So first of all, I want to be really clear. We are not challenging. Our lawsuit doesn't challenge the governor's ability to declare an emergency. He has a constitutional ability to do that. The challenge that we have right now and what we're facing is there is no precedent to what he's doing as far as the extension and the continual extension of the emergency proclamation, which is now going into its 30, 60, 90, almost 120 days, and all of the various proclamations he's put under that. So our lawsuit is saying, look, we feel that the emergency as originally stated, if you read his proclamations, you will see where it states that. As originally stated, we feel the emergency is over. The crisis still exists. I mean, we're still having COVID cases. We're still having we still need to work together, but we need to do it together with the executive branch and the legislature involved. The legislature has been completely cut out of this process. The status of the lawsuit is we have all of our discovery was submitted. Everything has been put into the courts. We are literally daily waiting for a hearing date, and that could come as soon as next week, Kelly. Which is good news. The courts are slow right now, and this is a federal case, so federal court in Tacoma. So we're just waiting. I'm waiting literally daily for an email that says, hey, we got a date. What we're trying to find out is we need some precedence. We just don't have it in any of this. The original proclamation, the emergency powers that were given to the governor were for thinking we were going to be preparing for a Cascadia earthquake or the mountain exploding or something like that, which gives the governor ability to do different things. It's never was intended for him to govern or dictate, unilaterally make decisions without legislative input. I'll give you one more thing real quick. The governor has never briefed the legislature in person since this crisis began. People need to know that. As a leader, why would you not be meeting with your key Speaker of the House and your minority leader and everybody else on a weekly basis? Why would you not be addressing the House of Representatives and the Senate about what's going on. When you make a proclamation as impactful as the one last week with the mandate on wearing a mask for the entirety of every citizen in the state of Washington, and I found out about that when I got an alert on my phone and when I got home and watched the news. We were never told in advance that he was going to do something of that magnitude.
Well, I can tell you one thing that he hasn't done. He hasn't fired Susie Levine at the Employment Security Department.
Ouch.
And that's really got me infuriated because hundreds of millions of dollars have been lost to Nigerian scammers, and legitimate claimants can't even get their first paycheck. Do you have any comments about that?
Oh boy, do I. So we do get briefings from the governor's office. So his staff had a lot of nice things to say about me too with the lawsuit. We do get briefings from them. And then we also get briefings from various department heads. And we had the honor and privilege of listening to Susie Levine last week give us her report, or should I say her 45, almost hour-long prepared speech that she read to us about how amazing and how great ESD is and how all the great things they're doing and how all this challenge that they faced and how they were never blah, 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 and how I didn't hear her at one point in time take responsibility for the fact that our state was ripped off to the tune of 650. Some think it could be as high as $1 billion or more. We're doing the best we can to get the people their money, but it may be as long as the end of July, if not longer, before people who have been waiting since March to get their funds. And then on top of that, she's put it on us legislators in our offices. We are inundated with hundreds and hundreds of emails and calls because we are the first responders to try to help people navigate through the cases. It's crazy. There's 80,000 people still that have not received their funds. We're hearing stories now from our constituents of people losing their homes, of people who their businesses never came back. They don't have an option to go back to work because guess what? Their businesses will never open again. And when you're looking at counties like Lewis County and Thurston, 15, 16, 17% unemployment rate, there's millions of people out of work. So I understand, and we all understood the magnitude of this. And it was unprecedented, to use their own words, right? That the amount of claims that they were going to have to do and how they were going to have to adjust this and do that. I expect that. And how they had to hire up and do different things. You'd think that they'd make the adjustments and do what was necessary to do it right, and that the tools that they have been given literally tens of millions, if not hundreds of millions of dollars to do, would be able to facilitate that. If she was a CEO of a Fortune 500 company, she would have been fired the day that came out. As a matter of fact, she probably, if she did the right thing, she wouldn't have been fired. She would have resigned. She would have taken full responsibility and said, you know what, I take full responsibility. I think it's better I step down and somebody else come in here. It's just, it's crazy to think what we're facing with that.
Well, and talk about crazy. Former Speaker of the House, Frank Chopp, wants to raise $2 billion in taxes. I can only speak for myself and my household. We can't withstand any more taxes than we've already seen. And now he wants to propose something that looks very much like an income tax to me.
Yeah.
Do you have any comments about that?
I've been a legislator now for 4.5 years, going into my third term now, and we'll be serving in my third term. Since the day I arrived, we have been telling our colleagues in the majority, the Democrats, that we need to save more money. Over the last 7-8 years, my entirety of time there, double-digit spending, new programs, new entitlements, things that can't be undone, right? Because a lot of things that people don't understand is we can only touch about 30% of the budget because once you put these entitlements in, it's very difficult to cut them. We had the McCleary decision, so 52% of our budget is devoted to our constitutional, mandate that says we must fully fund education. So we have that in place now. All of these things have added up. Now, at the same time, we've had the blessing of an economy in Washington State that's created double-digit increases in our revenue. And every time we get a revenue forecast, it's like Christmas, more money piling into the Capitol. So what does a conservative Republican say? Let's save that money for a rainy day. Let's be careful because it's not always going to be this good. We knew there was going to be an economic downturn. There's a cycle. It's, we've been on a long run. Now, we didn't know it was going to happen overnight. We didn't know that COVID was going to hit and immediately the economy was going to crash. But we knew there was going to be need to save. And even this last session, Kelly, you know this, you watched this. We saw a budget that had a $2 billion surplus, and they were going to spend not only all that $2 billion, but an additional almost $1 billion. And we were saying, time out. This is even before COVID. And the only reason it changed is because COVID hit towards the end of it, and they had the wisdom to go back to the drawing board, and they cut about $1 billion, and then the governor made some token vetoes in there and cut about another $500 million and said, we're going to be in much better shape. We're not. We're $8 billion in the hole over the course of time. What's their plan? We're going to raise revenue to buy our way out of this thing. What's our plan? No. We're going to go back to the drawing board and reprioritize. And yes, we're going to make adjustments. And yes, we need to look at everything. But we got to be careful, because what makes it so frustrating is that every time this happens, the good stuff gets cut. They go after the good stuff. And as you know, I'm the chair of the Outdoor Caucus. I'm an avid outdoorsman camping. We have the best state parks department in the country. It's a revenue generator. It creates tourism dollars and all sorts of stuff. Guess that'll be one of the first things that they consider cutting, our state parks. And then they'll just go down the line, right? But in the meantime, they hold that over our head and say, well, we won't have to do that if we can raise these taxes over here. And so to propose a major tax increase on the backs of people who have just been absolutely devastated. Are you kidding me? That's crazy.
Before we started this interview, we talked a little bit about the craziness that's happening in Seattle and the Seattle Capitol Hill occupation protest, infamously known as CHOP. And then I asked you a question about what possibility there is seeing some seats being gained in the House and the Senate this legislative cycle. And I know that that's something that you're working on diligently. I know it's something that I really want to see, which is why we're all working to try to promote conservative candidates across the state. What possibility do you think that there is that we can gain those seats?
There is possibility every election cycle for change. And we've seen this time and time again, right? We've seen this, it goes in cycles. We've seen this in states that were traditionally blue go red. We've seen red go blue. There's all sorts of different things. I want to be optimistic, and I want to back that optimism with hard work. And that's what I'm doing. So I'm the co-chair of the House Republican Organizing Committee, which means I'm tasked with raising a lot of money and recruiting really good candidates. And we're doing both. All your listeners out there, donate to your candidates because they need help. It's been very difficult in this COVID environment to get the word out. And of course, we have no festivals or parades or 4th of July celebrations or anything else to be able to introduce our new candidates. So we have to think of alternatives. But we recruited some amazing candidates up in the districts that are contested, like the 10th district, which is Woodbury Island. One of my favorite representatives in the world, Representative Smith, Norma Smith, is retiring after many years of diligent service. You've got some candidates there. Greg Gilday is phenomenal. Bill Brook is phenomenal. The 25th, you've got Cindy Jacobson, fantastic. You got Jennifer Seitzik up in 42nd, amazing. Right here in the 22nd, which says, oh, you could never have a Republican in the 22nd district. Baloney. When you have a candidate like Dusty Pierpoint, former chief of police for Lacey, one of the most admired individuals in Thurston County. So yeah, I think we can. The primary is coming up here in five weeks, I think. It's getting close. We have to battle the wave of the national scene, which has been very challenging in Washington State. I'm not going to lie. We have to overcome that. We have to overcome all the labels and crap that, every time we have a get together, we're labeled a right-wing rally. Every time rioters go downtown, it's a peaceful protest. Go figure that out. So we have a lot to overcome, but I'll tell you how we'll do it. Our candidates are embedded in our communities. They represent the communities they serve. They're teachers, they're employers, they're business owners, they're military servicemen. Kevin Ballard in the 28th, Jamie Michaud up in the 28th. Fantastic candidates. People need to get to know these people. We need balance in the state house. And if we don't have that balance, then all bets are off. If we slip back, it could be a generation before we are able to move forward. And that's a scary thought.